Hello again. You are listening to the Rant Entertainment. My name is Kenny Lowe, and today I am joined by another one of the hosts, Keith. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Keith White. In this episode, we'll begin our television and movie reviews, starting with Scream, the TV series.
Yeah, and for our reviews, we will look at different aspects of the show, anything from the characters and their development to storylines and the use of the slasher mystery genre for this particular show. We're also going to see what the series does well and where we think it could have been improved.
Other things we're going to be looking at include cinematography, plot believability, use of music and sound, themes, and pacing.
And although it's based on the film franchise, this show takes place in the town of Lakewood as opposed to Woodsboro. The first season was inspired by the real-life murder of Skylar Neese by her best friends Sheila Eddy and Rachel Shove. And the original was inspired by the Gainesville Ripper, who apparently murdered around 8 women on the school campus and left them posed in very sexually provocative poses after he was done committing the murders.
Well,
very interesting, right?
Yeah, a little sadistic.
Yeah. He was killed. Well, he wasn't killed, but he was submitted to lethal injection, I think, in 1996.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was the inspiration for the original movie starring Neve Campbell and that other girl from
You think that someone with that much thought into their murders would be a little more famous?
Yeah, but I hadn't heard about him until I started researching kind of the trivia behind the show and behind the film, and I thought that was it was interesting, but it was also just heartening just to see that someone could be that evil, I guess, that murderous.
Yeah. Well, even though they're not completely related, the show has a lot of allusions to the events from the films, including the very first scene in which Bella Thorne recreates Drew Barrymore's opening scene from the film.
Yeah, and she actually released a statement before the show came out saying how she was paying homage to Drew Barrymore, and having been in films with her, she was very excited to film that scene. There are also references to events in the films, and the main characters are modeled after the original characters in Scream.
Also, we have just learned the show has been renewed for a third season for 6 episodes. Unfortunately, the original showrunners will not be returning, meaning if the new team of writers is not as good or better than the current one, season 3 might be the final season of Scream.
And that is very unfortunate, because I actually do like this show, and when I originally heard that it was going to be released, I kind of had my reservations, and I was like, oh, why did they need to make a show out of something that was already pretty good? And
yeah,
I mean, they went ahead and they made a 4th movie, and that was already kind of like a little bit of a push for that series, because they tied it up pretty well, I'd say, in the original trilogy. So for them to bring it back and kind of just for more money, I thought it was a little bit of a wrong move. But I ended up liking this show. And so over the past 2 seasons, what are some of the things that you think the series has done well?
Well, I think the 3 big things are the use of technology, utilizing texting and webcams and just social media as a vehicle for the killer. Really smart.
Yeah, and portraying just how that could be a dangerous thing. You know, we use that to communicate with our friends and to express some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that we like or don't like. But in this series, that is not necessarily a good thing.
Then podcasting and Noah's interest in horror, it seemed a lot more natural than I think Jamie Kennedy was the it felt more natural and more kind of real to me, his character, and the way that they wrote how people appreciate dark media.
Yeah, and he didn't. I mean, he was basically Randy from the Scream movies, but in a different way. He was not so quirky, I would say. I think Randy was a lot more quirkier in the original Scream films, and Noah is a lot more toned down, I think, and like you said, it made him seem a lot more realistic, I think, and he was one of my favorite characters, actually. Him and Bex Taylor Klaus, who plays the Audrey. I think their friendship was really fleshed out and very well developed during the first season.
Yeah.
Another thing that I personally liked was that the deaths weren't just someone getting murdered with a knife, basically. Was the what it came down to. I think that they tried to push the limits, and this is a cable network show, so they were able to do a lot more things with the murders and kind of the explicitness of how some of these characters died.
Yeah.
Right? I also just really liked the backstory, and that it wasn't just someone seeking revenge. I think I mean there was that element of revenge, but there were a lot of potential responses and potential reasons for this killer to exist. It wasn't just the young people who could have potentially been targeted, but also their parents and just the secrets that this town has in general. I think that it provided for a lot more mystery, and it wasn't one of those things where you were just going to say, okay, this person's a killer, right? Even though sometimes it might have ended up that way. And I think throughout the season, I had an idea of who the killer was, but I switched my mind a lot of the times because of just the way that it was presented. It could have been anybody, basically.
And even, as you're talking about with the backstory, the Brandon James mask, like, concept, super interesting. I loved that the parents were involved, and there's all this air of, like, where the mask came from, or why it's so iconic within the context of the TV series. So to see them explain away the design of the mask, the iconic thing about Scream, very interesting. Yeah, I love that. I appreciated it very.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they didn't just use the same mask. From the Scream series. And if you didn't know, the first or the original mask was going to be made out of skin, so kind of like Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm also glad that they didn't go that route, because I think that I don't know, just I wouldn't have appreciated it as a fan of the original film series. I think that they kept the main element, which was the white mask, and they just revamped it and
and it was definitely approached in such a way that it created some sort of more mystery, or even just some more interest in just the backstory. At times when they would delve into the past, I would be just as interested, or even more interested, than when they're explaining the current events and what Emma and her friends were going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what do you think of the character of Emma, particularly just in the first season? Because I think that they changed her character a lot from season 1 to season 2. I personally think that season 1, she was just a typical final girl, and she was just, she was naive, even though she was part of the popular kids. She was a little bit, as opposed to her friends, she knew a lot less than the rest of them, for example.
Yeah, she definitely had some social impairments, I guess, and it was kind of explained away with her relationship with Audrey and their history. But the way that Willa Fitzgerald portrayed Emma was interesting, because she did feel really teenager-esque, or a lot of her responses to the things that would go on around her, felt very much like a typical teenager response, even when it was highly traumatic, death of all the people around her, essentially.
Yeah, and her character development was I think the pacing of her development was very well done during this first season. And she did remind me a lot of Neve Campbell, where Neve Campbell, she started off as like just not knowing why she specifically and her friends were being targeted, and then she became the strong final girl that she was the rest of the film franchise. And I mean, unfortunately, with Emma's character after the first season, I think that they regressed it a lot. I don't know if it was just kind of for us to be more involved in her character, but I mean, it didn't really. I don't know. First season, I thought Emma was a really good final girl. Second season, I don't really know if the writers knew where the direction of her character was going to go. But what do you think about that kind of the jump from season 1 to season 2 for Emma's character?
Yeah, her character is like in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a shell of its former self, in that she does retain some of her characteristics. And initially, I thought, okay, well, in these first 2 episodes, it's kind of explained away as her like post traumatic stress.
Yeah,
all of this murder and death around her, and distrust of virtually everyone. I think it manifested in some really odd behavior, which worked for a couple of episodes, and then after a while, I decided to think, well, maybe the writers are unsure, and that's why she kept like
Wavering.
peaking. Yeah, it was peaks and valleys all the way. Sometimes I would be like, this is a really good character, and sometimes I would be like, why is she doing this?
Yeah, and I thought the same thing, and there were times where I just got really angry at her responses to certain situations, and I think that a lot of it went back to her basically thinking, why me?
Yeah.
And that works for a little while. I think that the first couple episodes would have been a good way for her to kind of get over it, because compared to the rest of the cast, I mean, Audrey and Noah, I think they went through a lot more stressful situations than Emma, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Audrey is potentially one of the people that brought the killer to the town in the first place. So I think that her post-traumatic stress disorder, her the after effects of her decisions could potentially be seen as higher, because she might feel the guilt of causing this in the first place, I think. And so what is your thought about that whole situation?
So oddly enough, although Audrey in a lot of ways felt guilt, and she did experience such a more emotional circumstance both in season 1 and leading into season 2 and at the end of season 2, I felt that her character is pretty consistent in the way that she kind of responds to all this negative activity, this narrative. It's really interesting, because you would normally typically see a breakdown, I would say.
Yeah.
At some point she would break, but she kind of has like this character type that's I don't know what you would describe it as, but she definitely like bears all of this.
I mean, I would classify her maybe as a warrior.
Yeah.
I mean, she's definitely a fighter.
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, maybe Audrey's character is a lot stronger than Emma's character. And maybe the writers felt that keeping Emma in that certain limbo of, is she going to be a strong character, or is she going to kind of not be a strong character, is what affected Emma negatively on the show, and just in terms of likability.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I think that one of the best characters in this show is actually Brooke, which we haven't really talked about or touched on in a while. I think that to me, Brooke is the definition and the embodiment of a final girl. I mean, look at the things that if you look at the things that she's been through in the first season, and then the things that she went through in the second season, I mean, she's been close to death a lot, I think.
Yeah.
She got locked in a fridge, right? Or in a cooler.
Yeah.
The killer almost left her in there to die. Well, he did leave her in there to die, basically. And I think in second season she got stabbed.
Yeah, she did.
She was sent to the I don't know if she was sent to, I don't remember if she was sent to the hospital at a different time, but she's I think she's been getting kind of the short end of the stick in that sense. Like,
yeah, definitely.
You know, if this is supposed to be about Emma, why is Brooke the one that's getting attacked more often than Emma in that sense?
Maybe that's a season 3 thing.
maybe she's gonna be the reason that the killer is back for the next season. But I mean, Brooke to me is kind of a mixture of Emma and Audrey. I think that she's one of the strongest characters of the three in terms of just her sanity. I think that yes, the effects of season 1 or the events of season 1 affected her, but I think that she was able to get past that and kind of just live in the moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that to me, she's one of the best characters in the show. Her and I guess the other two, Audrey and Noah and Emma.
Yeah, they kind of go.
Yeah,
they go hand in hand.
Yeah, Noah and Audrey, they're best friends, and you can kind of see them as the yin and the yang. So those are some of the good things. I think that the characters are pretty good. I think that the writing for the characters was pretty well thought out, and it was very it brought us back to kind of the world of Scream, where those characters were likable. And of course, some of these are new actors, so they're not perfect, but they worked hard to be as perfect as they could be, right? And now we get on to some of the things that could have been improved. What are some of the things that you think could have been improved throughout these two seasons?
So one thing that I consistently disliked or even had some sort of qualm with was the way that they utilized the music to build tension. Sometimes it felt unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the most effective way for me or method would be just utter silence, but then you would have a lot of the typical like horror trademarks, the random loud violin or the the sudden noise or there's some things I just had issues with, and even the choice of music sometimes I felt was a little odd.
Choice of music, yeah. I think the they try to sometimes give you that idea of this is going to be a scary part, and I think that just doing it with just using the acting and kind of just setting the mood and the ambience would have worked well enough. But at the same time, we do have to remember that this is an MTV show. Yeah. So the thing with MTV shows is that they do play a lot of music in the shows. And if you're watching it live, they give you kind of a little blip at the bottom that says this is what's playing now. Huh. So I think that a lot of it does have to do with it being on MTV.
Kind of like a living commercial.
Yeah. If you did watch any of the shows, I didn't personally watch all the shows on MTV. I watched them on Netflix. I binge watched, but some of the shows that I did catch live, they did have that little now playing this artist by this artist. So that could be, it could be kind of like the self-marketing, self-promotion. Since MTV doesn't really play music videos anymore, they just incorporate like the new music into their shows and stuff.
Yeah. So. I mean, it worked sometimes, and sometimes I felt, oh, this is a pretty good song for what's happening right now. And other times I'm like, this is kind of like shilling. But now that you brought that to my attention.
Yes. And another thing that I thought could have been improved was just the originality factor. I liked that they used nostalgia, especially in the first season. But I think that second season was really the writer's place to become
a little more original,
yeah,
more fresh,
and I think that in that sense it lacked a lot. It lacked that originality, because now it's always going to be Scream is going to give us that nostalgic feeling of the original movies. Whereas it should have been season 2 is where Scream establishes their own style as opposed to the movies. They had the beginning of season 2 was just a recall to the beginning of Scream 2, if you remember, with Jada Pinkett Smith and her death in the movie theater, which is when the beginning of season 2 is where Audrey got attacked at the movie theater where she works. So they continued that whole recall of just previous horror movies, which could have been cool, but I think that for season 2 it should have been more an establishment of a style for this series particularly.
Yeah, because not only is there like scene to scene callbacks, but then just the overall narrative is so indicative of classic Scream. It doesn't really feel like they ever really pushed that originality, and sometimes it worked. Sometimes I appreciated the nostalgia trip, but then you can't really bank on that for an entire season.
Exactly. And in season 3, so now they did the whole nostalgia thing in season 1. They did that whole nostalgia thing in season 2. So season 3 has to establish what the season 3 or the Scream TV series style is going to be. Are they going to just be a nostalgia trip every time, or is there going to be something that's going to keep us coming back? Another thing that I think could have been better is, like you said, the scene by scene recreations of certain parts of not just Scream but also other movies, other horror movies. I know they had the movie theater had different titles for different movies or different horror movies that came out like during the 80s and 90s. And I can't recall one off the top of my head, but I know that they've done recreations of certain scenes from other movies.
Oh.
And just the pop culture references, I think that at some point they became a little just tiresome. Yeah, I get that there's going to be references, but I don't need to be told whenever there's going to be a references that it's a reference. I think that for fans of horror, we've seen enough horror movies that we can kind of see or notice that this is a reference to The Ring, or this is a reference to Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. And yeah, so in that sense, I think that it could have been improved, and it could have been a little maybe toned down just for this particular thing.
And finally, what do we hope for season 3?
Yeah, so season 3, at the moment they have a 6-episode season, which is shorter than their first 2 seasons. I think season 1 had 10 episodes.
Yeah, somewhere around that. 10,
season
12.
2, the same thing. They just recently had the Halloween special, which doesn't really tie into the whole story of the whole main story of the Scream series, but it was kind of like just a Halloween. It was just a Halloween special. Like the characters took a little trip to this island where there's like a murder mystery, and then there's it's a 2-hour thing, and it was
that probably counts as 2 episodes or something.
Yeah, okay. So I hope that they don't count those as 2 episodes for season 3 though, because they did at the end of the special, they kind of give you a hint that the season 3 killer was not the special killer.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I hope, that for season 3 it's not just 6 episodes. I want there to be an actual maybe 10, 12 episode television show. Even if it's the last one, I want it to kind of tell us where these characters are going, and there's more development to be done on these characters.
Yeah, for sure. They have so many loose threads that they just started, and then there's things I just wonder about. And I was wondering, when they would get to it, even in season 2, I was like, when are they going to explain all the stuff that's happening with Brooke's dad? Or, like Brandon James has a brother? And he might not be dead?
Yeah, maybe he's the killer for season 3. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely so many storylines that have been set up and that are not complete. I mean, I really do want to see a lot more of Brooke, and her character arc, I think, is one of the most interesting to me. I want to see if Emma actually gets an established character, or if she's going to continue being, all about her and kind of selfish. I want Emma's character to end up on a good note too. She started off okay in season 1, and then she kind of took a little plummet with the whole PTSD, but I do want to see her persevere. Right. Yeah. She is the final girl of the show, or the established final girl, because Noah keeps saying that. But I think that Brooke has a lot more potential to be the final girl, and it's
hopefully she lasts.
So I'm definitely going to be upset if her character gets killed off or something. I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, they kind of hinted at it all throughout season 2 that maybe she's not going to survive, or maybe she is. So I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that she's not going to die. Not that she's going to die, but I'm hoping that she's not going to die. I really want to see Audrey's character grow and get her happy ending. I mean, she's had a really difficult life, and even in that moment when there was a vulnerable moment in season 2 where she was basically telling Emma, I have feelings for you. And Emma was just like, well, what about me? What about my feelings? And I was just like, really?
Her reaction is...
you're going to sit there and kind of take ownership of this moment that was not even yours to begin with. So I really want Audrey to have her happy ending.
And her twin. I want Noah to have a happy ending. Each season is like this thing where they dangle a piece of meat in front of him. He tries to scratch at it, and he ends up falling off a cliff. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, can Noah be happy, please?
Yeah. And I mean, he had his 5 minutes of happiness, and when that instance when his happiness was just torn apart, I was like, no, why?
Especially in season 2.
So Noah definitely. I think that they should all get at least some sort of happy end.
Yeah, or at least closure to their character. I just want to, because of the nature that it might not even be renewed for a 4th season if this one isn't successful. It makes me want for them to flesh out all of these things they started. I want to know more about Brandon James. His character and his family is very interesting. And I want to see them develop more. I want to know all about all these shady things that happen in Lakewood. In Lakewood. Yeah. Especially and the one thing that I've always kind of wondered is why we mostly see Emma's family, but we don't ever really see anyone else's family besides Brooks.
That's another thing that I was going to say. The families, I mean, there's a story to these families. Yes, Emma's mom is kind of the main point of a lot of things that happened in the past, but where were Audrey's parents? I don't think we've ever seen Audrey's parents.
Yeah, we have.
I think we saw Noah's mom for like a few seconds.
Like what, season 1 maybe?
I think season 2. Oh. She might have just opened the door and said like Audrey's here or something. But I want to see more of Noah's parents. Like, do these families have a connection to any of the bad things that happen in Lakewood?
Yeah. We know the sheriff does.
Yeah. There's the
I want to know about him. Like, why is he? Where was his fall from grace that's been hinted at? I kind of like, as much as I'm interested in the things that will progress, like the actual narrative, I do enjoy some of this backstory, and it'll really help tie everything together and make these characters more important if they are eventually killed off.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah, and then just not giving us that there's always a character that we think is a killer and it's obviously not.
Yeah,
I think that not including that in next season would be,
or not forcing as hard, because that was my main gripe with season 2, is that there was this really strong like pressure towards one character, and that really made me already distrust that character isn't in any way involved with the killing. So if they did kind of go back to maybe season 1 where there was this really strong air of mystery, there are so many possibilities to the who it could be, without making that one of the things that the audience is focusing on, it'll really help with the narrative, because it will focus on the story as opposed to trying to figure out the story.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the main things that I thought could be changed for this new season. So I'm hoping that season 3 gets expanded to a full like 12 episode season. But yeah, if it does get a full season, then I'll definitely be watching. I'll watch even if it doesn't get a full season. But I really do hope that a lot of these things that have been set up over the past 2 seasons get concluded and tied up nicely, in a little package with a bow on top.
Out of curiosity, what if they do recall to another like Scream? Do you think they're gonna opt for like they're making a movie about Lakewood, or do you think they're gonna do some other like hardcore Scream callback? Or
Well, I hope that that doesn't happen. But it would be cool maybe to season 1 was an allusion to the first movie. Season 2 had one to the third, so maybe they will have an allusion to the third movie. But didn't they already have that in season 2 where one of the movies was?
I wasn't sure, because it looked like it was, but I'm like, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe one of the the reporter's not there anymore. Like the main reporter chick is not there anymore, but she's there. Maybe there's a new reporter coming into town and trying to get like the scoop on Lakewood and the murders and mysteries that occur there. So maybe I wouldn't mind it, actually. Maybe not. If I wouldn't want them to do like the very first episode, but somewhere like
if they open the first episode with a callback like they've been doing consistently, it'll actually kind of frustrate me, because I don't want it to be such a pattern. And like you're saying, if the style is gonna be recreating like old memories, then maybe not.
Well, let's hope. I hope season 3 gets a fresh new look. I hope that things get fleshed out, and maybe even bringing if me bringing new characters,
cameoing probably.
Maybe Neve Campbell comes back. I don't know. Maybe she can be the killer in season 3. But anyway,
and that concludes our show. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any other shows or topics you want us to cover, feel free to let us know on Twitter at the Rant 2020.
Yes, follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant Entertainment. There are also tons of articles and rants on our website, rantentertainment.wixsite.com/The Rant. And until next time.